and welcome to the weekly Rushes, your one-stop shop for all your movie and streaming news in one place. That title, the irony of that title isn't lost on me. It's been 3 weeks since the last weekly Rushes. News flow from Hollywood is slow. Part of me wonders whether we have had a bit of a mini glut after COVID, and now the pause in production and everything that happened during COVID and the pandemic is now filtering through to our sort of lack of stuff. And so what have we got for you this week? Jamie Foxx has been in the press an awful lot. Obviously, he was taken ill with an unknown medical condition on the set of his new Netflix film that he's been filming with Cameron Diaz. And whilst filming, obviously, he was taken off to hospital. There's been all sorts of rumours and sort of mutterings and chitter-chatter as to, what exactly had gone on. Rumours around the idea that he had or struggles with high blood pressure. Could he have had a stroke? Could he perhaps have had one stroke and then a second stroke? Those small strokes that sort of happen one after the other. And then more recently, last week, and in fact we picked up on this story on the Popcorn Junkies Instagram account, there was the suggestion, a quote from someone inside or near to the family saying, we're hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. And out of sensitivity to that, we pulled down our post about Jamie Foxx on the Popcorn Junkies Instagram as the press sort of ran in a sort of clamouring sort of frenzy to step towards the idea that Jamie Foxx was in a sort of perilous state. And in fact, his daughter Corinne Foxx has gone online, gone to social media and gone public, criticising the media for essentially running wild with this narrative and saying that actually, her father, Jamie, has been out of hospital for a while, is recuperating, is back at home, that there isn't this idea that he's literally at death's door. So she's really pushed back against these rumours. And it's a salutary lesson, a salutary tale, when you see those sentences alongside things that say, sources say, or insiders suggest, or someone close to the matter has revealed. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It can be an excuse and a reason to kind of generate all sorts of idle gossip, or sort of allow people to just speculate in a highly sort of irresponsible fashion. So again, out of respect, there, we were picking up on a story that a lot of the news gathering outfits were running with, and I think it's really good that she's come out, Corinne Foxx, Jamie Foxx's daughter, to say, look, you know what? Things aren't as bad as you're suggesting. He's not well and he's still recovering, but he's certainly not at death's door. Another big story that seems to have moved along a little bit is the Jonathan Majors story that we were reporting. Obviously, Jonathan Majors, the actor from Ant-Man, he's Kang the Destroyer, he's the great big new villain in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Obviously, he was in Creed 3, he was in last Black Man in San Francisco. He was a fabulous actor. Well, this is the story of the accusation that he was involved in a moment of domestic abuse or violence towards his girlfriend on a particular night earlier in the year. He appeared in court last week. The big story here is Jonathan Majors' sort of attorney, Priya Chowdhury, has been really pushing back on this, suggesting the idea that this is indeed a witch hunt, that they have irrefutable evidence, video evidence, phone evidence, text evidence, that no harm came to the woman, and that in fact most of the sort of physical ailments and complaints that she was talking about were either self-inflicted or inflicted upon having drunk too much or been sort of a little bit unwell. I just wanted to read from some of what Jonathan Majors' attorney actually said. We've provided the district attorney with irrefutable evidence that the woman is lying, including video proof. And yet this false case continues. The woman's claimed location shifts and a story morphs. The suggestion here is that when Jonathan Majors' team sent this proof that Jonathan Majors hadn't actually done what she claimed he had done, that her testimony and her defence and her charges started to shift somewhat. So we're in a situation now where actually Jonathan Majors' team are not wanting to, issue to the district attorney the other evidence they feel they have to prove that he's actually innocent, because they're worried that what's going to happen is the woman's going to shift her testimony again in order to make the sort of facts fit the equation. Now, this could easily be a guilty party sort of, kicking up all the dust, the fog of war, make it all very ambivalent and ambiguous. Or could it be that there is a sort of witch hunt of sorts going on where, certain sort of people want to, in authority in the police force somewhere, want to bring this guy down? Obviously, there's also the suggestion that other women have come forward. That hasn't yet been absolutely verified as to whether other women have come to step forward and what their charges are and what their complaints are. But apparently, video footage exists somewhere, which obviously we talked about it in the last weekly Rushes. It shows the victim, the woman, out clubbing later that night. Again, Jonathan Majors' lawyer says that they have a testimony by the driver of the car that they were in, who said that they saw and heard everything just before 1 a.m. and that, in fact, the woman assaulted Mr. Majors in the car whilst attempting to steal his phone. The driver has said that he will also testify that he unlocked the door to help Mr. Majors escape, and that the woman, in fact, attacked Jonathan Majors on the street. Apparently, it's suggested that Jonathan Majors then checked into a hotel separately, and he went back to check on the woman when he was worried that she could potentially be a suicide risk. And apparently, there's even body cam footage when the cops arrived and talked with the woman, where she said that she'd taken a few sleeping pills. So clearly, her mental state was awry. I tell you what sprung to mind as I was reading into all of these kind of like conflicting reports and this sudden sort of, talk of body cam footage and the idea that, the district attorney could sort of twist and pivot her sort of alibi and her sort of charges, if you like, or her description of the night of what happened. I was just beginning to get Johnny Depp, Amber Heard vibes around this. So, again, it feels like there's huge ambiguity and huge ambivalence being thrown all over the place with this. And to what extent is this about wanting to nail a sort of ascendant Hollywood star versus actually, the whole machine that comes behind this star, kind of trying to damage, limitate the final prosecution, if you like. I mean, obviously he's been let go by numerous agencies and management teams, but Marvel, Disney have yet to let him go. Though there is talk, as I understand it, there is talk that a recasting process is underway behind the scenes. Now, of course, the biggest story sort of pushing through Hollywood at the moment is the writer's strike, the Writers Guild of America's strike. The first, I think, in however many years, is it in about 10, 15 years or something like that? There was a 100-day strike, I think, back in 2012 or 2011 or something like that. Well, this is a strike in which screenwriters across America, but some elsewhere around the world, have gone on strike. 11,000 film and television writers on strike. And when these creative strikes happen, you cannot cross the picket line. If you were an individual aspirant writer, and all the screenwriters of Hollywood have kind of said, no, we're down in tools, not doing anything, but you weren't in the union, if you like, you weren't part of the guild, and you said, you know what, I'm going to go over that picket line and I'm going to finish the script for, I don't know, Superman Legacy or Ant-Man 6 or something like that. You would have a black mark put next to your name and you would never work again. You would have to make a decision as to whether the money you're about to be paid for the one thing you're about to do now, is that going to be enough for the rest of your career? So why are they striking? There is a strike. Well, there's a couple of reasons for the strike. In this streaming age, something called residuals have been put under pressure. And the residuals are things that, actors, writers, directors, upon repeats, if you get a show repeated, if it's shown and syndicated to lots of other sort of broadcasters around the world, all the creative talent and teams will get a small percentage of the profit or the money that comes out of those sales. We've done that. We've sold shows internationally, and then parts of that sort of sale, gets chopped up and certain people take their bits. There's also different rules that if you have something like, I think it's 5 series, if a series gets commissioned 5 times in America, then it becomes syndicated or something, and then suddenly, residuals, the amount of money that actors and writers and what have you make goes up. Now, of course, residuals is a way for writers in those fallow periods of time where you're not contracted, you're not working or whatever, for you to be able to earn royalties, essentially. Royalties is probably the best way to describe it. And those royalties can sustain writers. And we're talking about, some people think, oh, screenwriter must earn millions. The vast majority, like the vast majority of actors, are down at heel, busking from here to there, getting a bit of a job here, getting a bit of a job there. It's not consistent, it's not reliable, all that kind of stuff. And so, in a sense, those residuals can prove absolutely crucial and something of a lifeline and a backbone to many writers' careers. Residuals are going out the window with the streamers. Streamers like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, all that lot. They're really sort of nailing them to the ground. They're kind of really squeezing them until the pips squeak. Writers and their unions and their representatives, in terms of like, this is your fee, you write, you get paid, no residuals. Or they are running shorter, they've got series of a lower number of episodes. So you'll have a series of, say, I don't know, 6 episodes, rather than traditionally in the past you'd have a series of 25 episodes or something like that. So shorter contracts, no residuals, you're just paid for the job in hand. Another thing is they have writers' rooms in America. They have them here too, which is like, if you've got a show going, you'll have 10 writers in a room and they'll all come up with the scripts, and especially with comedy shows, everyone will be chucking in their kind of scenes and their comic writing and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of the studios, a lot of the television broadcasters, they want to reduce the number of writers in there, because essentially you're paying for 10 writers all to be in a room, and perhaps 4 of those writers are quite junior and they're learning and they're not contributing so much. But as the Writers Guild says, this is where new writers come in, learn their trade and gather their tricks and all that kind of stuff. So the studios are wanting to reduce those too. So smaller writers' rooms, no residuals, or virtually no residuals, unless you're a really sort of big writer, successful household name type writer. And then finally, the other aspect of this strike that's quite important is AI, artificial intelligence. More and more of the studios are using ChatGPT or chatbots and all this kind of stuff to, if not necessarily write scripts, to, I think I've talked about it before, but to create narrative outlines for new projects and ideas. And, you know, writers earn on a sliding scale of commission. You know, they'll be commissioned and paid to create an outline, then they'll be paid to write a first draft, second draft. In production, if they have to redraft, you'll be paid more money thereafter. But what some of the studios are doing is they're trying to remove the need for script writers at the earlier stages, where you're just looking at the nuts and bolts of what makes a good story. Then we bring the humans in to actually kind of populate this structure with personality. Understandably, writers are worried, is this the thin end of the wedge? At what point will this stop? Are we going to see films and projects literally made by AI or written by AI? And so the Writers Guild strike is taking effect. Shows are closing down. Chat shows, you know, lots of these chat shows like the Jimmy Fallon Show and all those kind of things, Saturday Night Live, you know, they have script writers on site. They're writing as it goes and you know, as they're about to go to air. Lots of those shows have been shuttered or have been put on pause and can't be broadcast. Other shows have had to pause production because of the writer's strike are Severance, Stranger Things, the new Game of Thrones spin-off series. It's a big deal, this. It's a big deal. And it's only at moments like now that you realise that actually, God, we all take for granted writers, don't we? I mean, I think as soon as you no longer have new programs coming through, people will be like, well, why is this happening? And suddenly you go, writers aren't getting a good enough deal. Problem with it all is, though, I think the vast majority of the general public, maybe you sit within this camp, will think, this is a bit of a middle-class problem, isn't it, really? I mean, this is a certain sort of trade that's quite sort of privileged anyway, and if you're in it, then it's quite rarefied. So, you know, what more do you want? You're working in a really sort of, you know, I don't know, rarefied, creative, and you know the risks, and these are the risks, and this is the industry. But I think a lot of the Writers Guild representatives are saying, you know, this happens in our industry. This could happen in lots of other industries, especially around the AI side of things. Also in the news recently has been Simon Pegg. Oh, we like Simon Pegg. I must admit, have I always liked Simon Pegg? I've always found him all right. I've grown to like him more in recent years, but if I'm really honest, I've always felt there's been a bit of a shadow over him. He's always seemed a little bit distracted, a little bit ill at ease. There's always a discomfort in the back of his eyes. I don't know whether it might be one of those things where he had such supreme success sort of early on in his career, and now obviously he pops up a lot in Mission Impossible and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, he was talking to Desert Island Discs, and he opened up about his alcoholism, about the fact that while shooting Mission Impossible 3, he discovered how much he was actually using alcohol and how much he had sort of essentially lost himself in the fog of addiction. He talks about how you become very sneaky when you have something like alcoholism in your life, and how he'd turn up to set and he'd have drunk a bit too much, and how he would spend his time offset between shooting days in hotels in Beverly Hills just downing all the alcohol. He said in his interview with Desert Island Discs, you learn how to drink alcohol without anyone noticing, because it takes over. It wants to sustain itself and it will do everything it can not to be stopped. But eventually it just gets to a point when it can't be hidden. And that's when, thankfully, I was able to pull out of the dive. So Simon Pegg now in recovery, obviously a very dear friend of Tom Cruise, and he also admits in the interview that he never ever goes near the topic of the Church of Scientology. Not too sure how many of you are superhero fans here, but it's big news that essentially James Gunn has written the script and is going to make a new film, create a new iteration of Superman, which of course means that we're going to get a different feel for Superman. It's not going to be Henry Cavill, who has played him in the previous sort of DC films. This is a new film. It's coming from James Gunn, the man who's brought us the recent Guardians of the Galaxy 3, that's doing increasingly well at the box office, which is coming as a relief to many superhero comic book fans. But this is the search for some of the key cast members of any new Superman film. So, who do you think would make a fabulous new Superman? Now, one of the names that's in the frame, and apparently who really impressed them at a screen test, is a chap called David Corenswet. Corenswet? I think it's Corenswet. David Corenswet. He was the projectionist in the recent horror film Pearl that stars Mia Goth. He was very good. He was very low-key sinister. Another actor who we refer to, but I can remember his name, is Jacob Elordi. He hasn't been confirmed as going for it, but I think he's a lot of people's hot favourite for a possible Superman. Jacob Elordi obviously is the very good-looking chap from Euphoria, who I think a lot of people would love to get the gig. The British actor Tom Brittney is also in there as a possibility. I think he might have been screen tested too. I think Tom Brittney is from he plays the Reverend Will Davenport in Grantchester. You take a look at his photo there, just on the screen. You can see why there's a likeness, isn't there? There's a likeness there. Obviously, they're also looking for performers or actresses that could play Lois Lane. And one of the contenders there, I've really hurt my finger, is Emma Mackey from Sex Education. There's also Rachel Brosnahan, who is from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which I haven't had a chance to get to, but I hear great things about it. But also in there as a possibility for Lois Lane is Bridgerton's Phoebe Dynevor, who, that would be interesting, and Samara Weaving, who I think is a sensational actress. She was also in Nine Perfect Strangers, or whatever that Nicole Kidman series was. She's very good, incredibly striking looking woman. She was also in Scream 6. I think she played didn't she play the film lecturer or teacher at the beginning, the first victim. So they're all up possibly in there for Lois Lane. But also there's talk of who could play Lex Luthor. And I think this suggestion is a really good one. Apparently, tipped as favourite is Renfield's Nicholas Hoult. And if you think about it, he could be good. I wonder whether they'll shave his head or not. Apparently, I didn't realise, he had a very close call, nearly cast as the Batman in Matt Reeves' recent The Batman, obviously pipped at the final hurdle by Robert Pattinson. Richard Dreyfuss, any Richard Dreyfuss fans here? Do you remember him from Jaws? He played the sort of incredibly hyperactive, incredibly sort of restless, agitative, keen and eager, sort of, rule-breaking kind of scientist, oceanographer who goes on the ship out to find the big great white in Jaws. He's brilliant. I loved him. The Goodbye Girl, he won an Academy Award. I'm a big fan of Richard Dreyfuss. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, he was also good in that. Well, he's caused all sorts of dramas through some pretty stupid, senseless, thoughtless, privileged nonsense that he's been saying. He said, in relationship to the Oscar rules around diversity and inclusion, he said, the new rules on diversity make me want to vomit. He raged about the fact that he now, as an actor, would never be allowed to play a black character, which in and of itself, the fact that he can say that and be outraged by it, perhaps suggests that none of the progress that's been made in recent years has in any way touched the edges of him. I find this an incredibly frustrating, disappointing moment in an actor who I hold in high regards, sort of life and career. He invokes even Laurence Olivier, saying that he played Othello back in 1965 and he did it in blackface, and he played a black man brilliantly. Richard Dreyfuss goes on to say, am I being told that I will never have a chance to play a black man? Is someone else being told that if they're not Jewish, they shouldn't play the Merchant of Venice? I do think the difference here is skin colour. I mean, I think we've often talked about the idea, like, let's look at the Helen Mirren non-Jewish actress playing the Israeli Prime Minister. Should it have been a Jewish actress? I mean, the point is, if you're an actor, you can act. But when it comes to skin colour, there is a huge difference, and all sorts of social cues and cultural kind of prejudices that are bedded into the idea of being black-faced. The very act of a white person making themselves black in and of itself is insulting and is kind of reminiscent and triggering of a time when such a fact was a reminder of the inequalities between black and white people. He also said, it's so patronising not allowing white actors to play black people. It's thoughtless and it's treating people like children. Again, I think Richard Dreyfuss is coming from a time and an era of entitlement. He's refusing to see the privilege that he has or has had as a white male actor, that there are gazillions of roles. And I think this is where it kind of kicks in, really, isn't it? Doesn't it? How many roles are there for white men versus how many roles there are there for black men? Not many. So if there are going to be black roles coming through, offer them to black men, because at the end of the day, there are so many fewer opportunities, certainly when he was performing and when he was acting. So to rail against diversity in this fashion, I think, shows a total out of touchness on behalf of an actor who, as I say, I used to hold in quite high regard. In terms of casting and new projects that are coming through, so Jesse Buckley and Paul Mescal, two fabulous Irish actors. Paul Mescal, obviously, recently nominated for his performance in Aftersun. Jesse Buckley was recently nominated, or the year before, nominated for a role in The Lost Daughter. They're both going to star in excuse me, that's the dogs in the background going nuts. They're going to star in a new adaptation of a book by Maggie O'Farrell called Hamnet, which kind of imagines the life of William Shakespeare, well, specifically William Shakespeare's wife, and how she struggles to come to terms with the loss of their son, Hamnet, who and the way in which the trauma of losing their son in the end sort of influences and leads to, and perhaps is the inspiration for Hamlet. I think this could be quite good. This will be a sort of period drama piece. I'm guessing Jesse Buckley will play Shakespeare's wife, and does that mean Paul Mescal will play with the bard himself, William Shakespeare? This is going to be directed by Chloe Zhao. Chloe Zhao did Nomadland, which the more I think about it in retrospect, I think Silk Purse, Cow's Ear, Emperor's New Clothes. I'm not entirely convinced in retrospect whether Nomadland was as good as I thought it was. And she did The Eternals, which I thought was a ghastly Marvel film. Beetlejuice 2. Who wasn't a fan of Beetlejuice 1? Well, actually, a few people weren't a fan of Beetlejuice 1. It's a bit weird. It's Tim Burton, goes weird. But I think the thing about Beetlejuice that makes it stand out head and shoulders above all the other kind of nonsense that gets made is Michael Keaton's turn as the incredibly curious, from the other side of the grave, ghost Beetlejuice. I mean, what a fabulous character. Expletive and rule-breaking and funny, almost like a stand-up comedian. Absolutely batshit crazy, nuts, surreal, and all the rest of it. Beetlejuice 2 is in production, or it's moving ahead. Tim Burton's at the helm. He's directing again. Justin Theroux has joined the production and the cast. Jenna Ortega is in there. Winona Ryder is coming back. But also joining them is Willem Dafoe. And I believe Willem Dafoe is joining as a law enforcement officer or a police officer from the afterlife. My only concern with this whole project is that Michael Keaton isn't held back, because I think the original Beetlejuice was made at a time when Tim Burton didn't sort of hoover the human emotion or the ability to kind of be improvisational out of something. I do worry sometimes with Tim Burton that he's so meticulous in managing everything that everything feels so sort of polished and CGI'd and perfect. Whereas what I liked about Beetlejuice was it was chaotic. It was sort of, and it was a bit dodgy at the edges, and it was a bit rough and ready. And within that, Michael Keaton's character of Beetlejuice really sort of excelled. So I hope they maintain that. I hope it doesn't become too streamlined and polished a prospect. Johnny Depp, obviously his new film where he plays King Louis the 86th or 16th or 14th or whatever. That's being launched at the Cannes Film Festival. It's been shown at the Cannes Film Festival. His first sort of major sort of cinematic appearance since the whole Amber Heard trial and all that kind of stuff. But he's pulling together his second directorial effort. His first film he directed in 1997 was The Brave, in which he starred alongside, or directed certainly, Marlon Brando. This is his new project. His new film is going to be a biopic of the Italian artist Modigliani. And if you don't know Modigliani, he used to do those, or used to paint those wonderfully sort of long, willowy portraits of often nude women, naked women. So he's a household name, Modigliani, and this is going to be a biopic about him. In his cast, he's got Riccardo Scamarcio, Pierre Nini, and Al Pacino. Al Pacino's the big name in there. The biopic is going to follow the famous painter in 1916, I think across a sort of turbulent, they say, 48 hours, as he threatens to end his career and leave the city. And it's a moment of sort of, I'm wondering whether what Johnny Depp's going to try and do here is park within Modigliani's sort of loss of faith in his artistry and his desire to kind of turn his back on the art establishment, maybe a little bit of what he's gone through with potentially turning his back on the Hollywood establishment and running away and cutting himself clear, and as Johnny Depp, pursuing his dream with music and all that kind of stuff. So I think we can rest assured that with Johnny Depp kind of going for this Modigliani biopic, he's trying to fold into, I think what he sees in Modigliani's story is a little bit of the DNA of what he's gone through himself. It's called simply Modi, as in Modigliani, but M-O-D-I. The first four letters, maybe that was his nickname. Maybe they'd all go, hey, Modi. Oh, everyone's lovely father of the internet. Father, online father. Dada. It all sounds so bloody strange, but that's what they all say, all the youngsters. They call Pedro Pascal the internet's daddy. Pedro Pascal, he of The Last of Us, who everyone has absolutely fallen in love with. He who is soon to be seen in Pedro Almodovar's short film, which is, by all accounts, a riff on Brokeback Mountain, A Strange Way of Life, in which he stars with Ethan Hawke. That's going to also be released at the Cannes Film Festival. It's been announced that he's joining the ever-burgeoning cast of Ridley Scott's Gladiator sequel. He's joining Barry Keoghan, he's joining Denzel Washington, and obviously Paul Mescal is in there too. So Pedro Pascal, we don't know who he's playing, but he is so flavour of the month, isn't he? Flavour of the year. He's just been quietly just beavering away in the background. Every now and then I'll watch something and there he is, he's in it. And you think, oh, like, what was it? The Kingsman, the sequel, the second Kingsman film. Pedro Pascal all over it. So he's joining Gladiator. And I think, this is developing quite a cast. I almost can't see how this can fail, Gladiator 2. Taika Waititi. Comic actor, writer, director. Next Goal Wins, I think, is his new film. We reacted to the trailer about the worst football team in the world, and now Michael Fassbender tries to make them at least score a goal. I think that's the idea. He's in talks to direct a new film. Obviously, he's been attached a lot to a new Star Wars film, but all these new Star Wars films keep seeming to be being talked about, and then you can't really get a precise date on any of it. So Taika Waititi obviously directed Thor, the two recent Thor films, and I think he won an Oscar, didn't he, for screenwriting, Jojo Rabbit. He's been announced, or he's in talks to direct Kazuo Ishiguro's book, Clara and the Sun. I think this is a book, I think the book's about a robot friend or a robot child or girl that's created to prevent teenagers from getting lonely. And just that idea, if you think about our current situation with AI and the way in which Snapchat is using AI to kind of buddy people on their kind of social media, if you think of that film, Joaquin Phoenix's Her, where he falls in love with Scarlett Johansson's voice and what is love, and if you're getting what you need from a relationship from AI, does it matter if it's AI? I don't know. Ethical issues, all sorts of ethical, emotional, soulful issues coming up. And this is a film, as I say, it's called Clara and the Sun, and it's about this. It's about a robot girl that's created to accompany or keep teenagers company. This is going to be the sort of grown-up, sensible end, I guess, of Megan, as Megan 2 goes into production. So this will be the classy end. Quite a serious topic. I mean, Taika Waititi, I think, very much has a sort of camp, slapstick approach to things. So it'll be interesting to see if this is a sort of more serious, more contemplative, thought-provoking portrait of Kazuo Ishiguro's book. That strange genre of film known as the high-rise thriller. Is it The Towering Inferno? Die Hard, all that kind of stuff, Skyscraper, that was one, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure. Anyway, there's a new one. And of course, it's been a matter of time just before someone shot something around The Shard, London's The Shard. This is going to star Daisy Ridley. She plays the most sort of experienced espionage-like tooled up window cleaner. I think she literally is a window cleaner in it. But you know, the kind of window cleaner who has to clean the Shard is someone with a supreme skill set of being able to scale buildings. But she has a past where she used to be a soldier, and so she has to use some of those skills. So I think it's going to be a case of her like literally like squeegee, looks through a window, sees some awful thing happening, and then decides to save them. I mean, are we going to be looking at some sort of George Formby kind of when I'm cleaning windows / meets, I don't know, 007 and all that kind of stuff? Well, funnily enough, it's being directed by Martin Campbell, who's the man behind GoldenEye and Casino Royale. So it's going to be a little bit cleaning windows. It's going to be a little bit Shardy, skyscraper thriller, a little bit James Bondy. I mean, I must admit, whenever you walk past the Shard and those sorts of buildings, you think, who the hell cleans those windows? How do they do it? One of the films that is being released this week is Fast X, the 10th iteration of the Fast and the Furious franchise, which obviously originally started with the actor Paul Walker, who tragically lost his life in that awful car crash that was much publicised and just took Hollywood by, just completely knocked Hollywood sideways, and everyone was kind of shocked and horrified. And of course, he left behind him his daughter, Meadow Walker Thornton Allen is her first name. Anyway, she's teased the fact that in the new upcoming Fast X, starring all the usual suspects, Van Diesel and all that kind of stuff, that she's going to have a cameo in it. His daughter's going to have a cameo, which I think is a really sweet, lovely, warm thing. As she herself said, the first Fast was released when I was 1 year old. I grew up on set watching my father, Vin, Jordana, Michelle, Chris, and more on the monitors. Thanks to my dad, I was born into the Fast family. I can't believe now I get to be up there too. I like that. And so streaming news, some of the streaming stories this over the last couple of weeks. Ryan Murphy, obviously huge success with Dahmer, the story of Jeffrey Dahmer, starring Evan Peters. He's obviously in the process of making sure that Kim Kardashian can learn how to act. She's been seen going to acting lessons with a copy of American Horror Story under her scripts under her arm. So Ryan Murphy has managed to get her involved in American Horror Story. Netflix have commissioned a second monster anthology series from him. So he obviously did Dahmer. Huge success, huge hit. I think, how many times was it watched? It was watched for more than 1 billion hours of viewing in just the first 60 days of the Netflix platform, and it just sits just behind Stranger Things 4 as one of the most watched shows on Netflix. Well, Ryan Murphy has secured another commission, obviously, for something similar. Obviously, they're calling them the monster anthologies now. He's done the crime ones, hasn't he? He did the O.J. Simpson, all that kind of stuff. So Ryan Murphy, he's a producer. You don't mess with him. He's got the Midas touch. He manages to, hit success in the oddest places, often in the darkest and most grisly of places too. And obviously, a lot of kind of controversy surrounded Dahmer in terms of was enough sensitivity afforded to the victims and the families of the victims in the telling of that story. Well, they've hit upon him, and Netflix have hit upon his second season, and this is going to be called Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. I didn't know anything about these two. This is the story of the two brothers who apparently in 1996 were convicted for the murders of their parents. There seems to be no lessening of the appetite for real-life crime and turning these things into sort of grisly dramas, but this is less about serial killers, and I think this is going to be a more nuanced piece about the sort of believability or not of these two brothers and the layers of deceit that went into sort of covering up the fact that they killed their parents. And that brings us to films of the week, and there are two films out this week. Fast X, what can I say about this? This is number 10 in a long franchise of films. I think we're going to go and see it. I'm going to go and see it, and I want to review it. I'm going to react to it in terms of what it is. I've only ever seen Hobbs and Shaw. I think that was a spin-off, wasn't it, or a sort of sidebar to the whole Fast and the Furious thing. Fast cars, ludicrous things. I mean, the last footage I saw of Fast and the Furious, a car looked like it became a UFO and took off into space or something. It's meant to be silly. It's meant to be over the top. Van Diesel's in there. I must admit, I only like Van Diesel as Groot. So, yeah, we're going to check this out. Action, hijinks, fast cars, revving up, lots of stunts. For me, I like real stunts rather than CGI stunts, so I don't know how much you're going to get from it emotionally. But I think, if you just want to go, is it a boys' film? I think it might be a boys' film more than a girls' film. I don't know. Is that sexist? Fast X, that's the big tentpole release this week. Obviously, that's going to be hoovering up most of the big screens. And the other film that's released this week is Beau is Afraid. This is Ari Aster's third film. He's the director of Midsommar and Hereditary, both incredibly good films. Midsommar has gone further and further up my list of favourite films the more I've seen it. Hereditary, I loved, but I thought the ending was overblown. I think the ending of both his films have been overblown. Anyway, Beau is Afraid stars Joaquin Phoenix. And just looking at the trailers, it looks pretty batshit crazy, pretty surreal, quite out there. It feels like it's sort of part of that kind of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind type thing. And from a lot of reviews that I'm reading, it's almost like, yeah, there's a lot of interest in there, but it's almost too much. It's too rich. There's too many ideas, and it does too much batshit craziness. We'll be seeing that too. Always good to see Joaquin Phoenix. It looks like there's some kind of trauma, some psychological breakdown. I mean, Joaquin Phoenix was kind of doing the rounds saying that don't take mushrooms and see this film. It looks like someone's taken mushrooms and made this film, to be honest with you. So we'll be checking that out too. So if you fancy something really surreal and batshit crazy, Beau is Afraid. And if you fancy something like rev 'em up, put your foot down to the floor and just pile on through at 95,000 kilometers or miles per hour, Fast X is the film for you. And there you have this week, or this fortnightly, or this 3 weekly's weekly rushes. A rushed rush through all your movie and streaming news. Tell us which stories resonated most for you, and we hope you have a fun film-packed weekend.